In the dusty archives of a Hollywood estate sale, tucked between forgotten scripts and faded photographs, lay a single piece of paper that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about Audrey Hepburn's craft. 5 handwritten lines in her delicate script, not love letters, not diary entries, but something far more intimate, the secret blueprint she used to transform into Holly Golightly. What those lines revealed about her method would shock even the most devoted fans and prove that behind the effortless elegance was a calculated genius that Hollywood never truly understood. Auctioneer barely glanced at it, just another piece of memorabilia from the Paramount Pictures vault clearance of 2019. But when film historian Margaret Chun held that weathered note card up to the light, her hands began to tremble. There, in Audrey Hepburn's unmistakable handwriting, were 5 cryptic lines that read like a treasure map to her soul. Character breathes before I do. The first line read, "Find her heartbeat in my wrist." The word seemed almost mystical, like an incantation whispered by a sorceress preparing for transformation. Little did the world know, this wasn't just a preparation note. It was the Rosetta Stone of one of cinema's most enigmatic performances. Margaret had studied Hepburn's work for decades, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The paper was slightly yellowed, bearing coffee stains and the worn edges of something that had been handled countless times. In the corner, barely legible, was a date, September 15th, 1960, just weeks before filming began on Breakfast at Tiffany's. The other auction attendees bustled around her, hunting for signed photographs and costume pieces, completely unaware that she held in her hands the key to understanding how an unknown Belgian dancer had reinvented herself as Hollywood's most beloved icon. This wasn't just memorabilia. This was archaeological evidence of artistic genius in its purest form. What made this discovery even more extraordinary was its context. Hepburn was notoriously private about her process, rarely giving interviews about her craft, and never revealing the mechanics behind her seemingly effortless performances. Yet here was her most intimate creative secret, laid bare in her own delicate penmanship. 5 lines that would prove she was far more than just a beautiful face who got lucky in Hollywood. For 60 years, Hollywood perpetuated a beautiful lie about Audrey Hepburn. They painted her as a natural, an accidental star who simply showed up and charmed her way to greatness. Studio executives would smile knowingly when asked about her talent, suggesting she was more lucky than skilled, more blessed than trained. Even her closest colleagues seemed to buy into the myth of effortless Audrey. But those 5 lines told a different story entirely. Character breathes before I do wasn't the musing of an amateur, it was the battle cry of a methodical craftsperson who understood that great acting begins long before the cameras roll. While her contemporaries were studying their lines, Hepburn was studying souls. The truth no one dared to speak was that Audrey Hepburn was Hollywood's most underestimated intellectual. Behind those doe eyes and that gamine smile was a calculating artist who had developed her own revolutionary approach to character development. She didn't just read scripts. She dissected them like a surgeon, finding the psychological DNA that would allow her to completely inhabit another life. Industry insiders who knew her well would later confess, in whispered conversations at Beverly Hills parties, that working with Hepburn was like witnessing a master magician at work. She would arrive on set not just knowing her lines, but carrying within her the complete emotional history of her character. Every gesture, every glance, every breath had been carefully orchestrated weeks in advance. The 5-line preparation method wasn't something she learned in acting school. It was her own invention, born from her background in dance and her intuitive understanding of how physical movement could unlock emotional truth. While other actors relied on external techniques, Hepburn had discovered a way to build characters from the inside out, starting with something as fundamental as the rhythm of breathing. This revelation would force us to reconsider not just Hepburn's legacy, but the entire narrative of how great performances are born. The woman the world thought was a natural was actually Hollywood's most sophisticated technician. The first line of Hepburn's preparation list reads like poetry, but it conceals a technique so advanced that method acting teachers would spend decades trying to reverse engineer it. Character breathes before I do wasn't metaphorical. It was a literal instruction she gave herself for every role, a way of surrendering her own life force to become someone else entirely. Margaret Chon's research revealed that Hepburn had developed this technique during her early days in London chorus lines, where she discovered that changing her breathing pattern could instantly alter her entire presence on stage. She would spend hours in her dressing room, experimenting with different rhythms, until she found the one that belonged to her character, not to Audrey. For Holly Golightly, that breath was quick and shallow, like a bird's, nervous, flighty, always ready to take flight. Hepburn would practice this breathing pattern for weeks before filming, even incorporating it into her daily life. Friends reported seeing her at restaurants, breathing like Holly while ordering coffee, her entire demeanor shifting with each calculated inhale. But the genius of this technique went beyond mere physical preparation. By changing her breath, Hepburn was accessing what neuroscientists now understand as the vagus nerve's connection between respiratory patterns and emotional states. She had intuitively discovered that breath is the bridge between consciousness and character, between actor and role. The second part of the line, "Before I do," reveals the most startling aspect of her method. Hepburn wasn't just adding character breath to her own. She was replacing it entirely. For the duration of filming, Audrey Hepburn would essentially cease to exist as a separate entity, becoming completely subsumed by the rhythm and spirit of her character. This wasn't method acting as Stanislavski taught it, nor was it the emotional substitution favored by Lee Strasberg's disciples. This was something entirely new, a form of artistic possession that allowed Hepburn to channel characters with an authenticity that seemed almost supernatural. Years later, when asked about her process, Hepburn would smile mysteriously and claim she simply tried to be truthful. Now, we know the truth was far more complex and fascinating than anyone had imagined. Find her heartbeat in my wrist. The second line of Hepburn's preparation list initially baffled even seasoned acting coaches when Margaret Chon shared her discovery. What could it possibly mean to find another person's heartbeat in your own body? The answer would prove to be more revolutionary than anyone expected. Through interviews with Hepburn's longtime physician, Dr. Robert Anderson, Chon uncovered the startling truth. Hepburn had taught herself to consciously alter her heart rate to match what she believed would be her character's natural rhythm. It was a technique so advanced that it bordered on the medical, requiring the kind of body awareness typically found only in trained athletes or meditation masters. For weeks before filming Breakfast at Tiffany's, Hepburn would sit in quiet meditation, imagining Holly Golightly's life experiences and allowing her heart rate to respond accordingly. Holly was a character living in constant anxiety, always running from something. Her heart would beat faster than Audrey's naturally calm rhythm. Through concentrated practice, Hepburn learned to sustain this elevated heart rate for hours at a time. Dr. Anderson recalled being initially concerned about this technique, worried it might be dangerous to her health. But Hepburn insisted it was essential to her craft. She told me that if her heart wasn't beating like Holly's, then she wasn't really Holly, he remembered. I thought she was being dramatic, but watching her on screen, you could actually see the difference it made. The physical transformation was remarkable. With her heart beating at Holly's rhythm, everything else followed. Her movements became more restless. Her speech patterns quickened. Even her sleeping patterns changed. Hepburn was essentially reprogramming her autonomic nervous system to match her character's psychological state. This technique explains one of the great mysteries of Hepburn's performances, why she seemed so genuinely present in every moment. why her reactions felt so spontaneous and real. She wasn't acting emotions. She was experiencing them through a carefully constructed, physical framework that made authentic feeling inevitable. Modern actors and directors who have studied this technique describe it as both brilliant and terrifying, a level of commitment that goes far beyond what most performers are willing to attempt. The third line of Hepburn's list, Week 3, Mirrors Tell the Truth, opens a window into perhaps the most intensive period of her character preparation. According to her personal assistant, Elena Rodriguez, Hepburn would dedicate the third week before any major role to what she privately called her mirror sessions. These weren't typical acting exercises. Hepburn would spend hours each day standing before various mirrors in her apartment, literally watching herself transform. She would begin as Audrey, relaxed, centered, breathing normally. Then, slowly, she would invoke her character's breath, heart rate, and gradually allow the transformation to occur while studying every micro-expression.